Curious to know the most shocking and brutal crimes ever committed by women? Keep watching. From mothers who became executioners of their children to sadistic couples who carved a path of torment and death across state lines, these stories force us to confront the depths of human depravity. Grab your seats because these crimes will make you quiver. Tiffany Moss, State, Georgia, U.S. Tiffany Moss was convicted of murdering her 10-year-old daughter in 2019. She received a lot of attention due to the severity of her crime. Tiffany physically abused Imani for years before she died. Tiffany married Imani's father, Emin, in July 2009. They had 2 children together. There are no records that Tiffany hurt her other children, but she did hurt Imani. The abuse got worse in March 2010. Imani was 6 years old then. She told the school nurse that she was afraid to go home with a bad report card because her parents would hurt her. Imani said Tiffany hit her with a curtain rod. The nurse found many scabs, bruises, and welts on Imani's arms, back, chest, legs, and shoulders. Because of the injuries, Imani was taken to the police station. Tiffany was arrested and charged with first-degree child cruelty. She admitted hitting Imani 3 times after Imani did not do her homework. Tiffany pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 5 years of probation under Georgia's First Offender Program. The Georgia Division of Family and Children Services, GDFCS, agreed to this plea deal. After Tiffany and Iman completed parenting classes, GDFCS dropped the case against them. After the beating in March 2010, Imani was removed from Tiffany's home. She stayed with her grandmother, Robin, for about 6 months. Iman wanted custody of Imani, and in the fall of 2010, GDFCS returned Imani to him. Later, prosecutors said the March 2010 abuse started a pattern that led to Imani's death. Tiffany kept abusing Imani for the next several years. In July 2012, Imani tried to run away twice. On one occasion, she told an apartment office worker that Tiffany had tied her with a belt and put her in a cold shower. Police came, but Tiffany said Imani was lying. Because there was not enough evidence, Imani was sent back to Tiffany and Iman. In July 2012, police found Imani sleeping in bushes near an apartment complex. She told an officer that Tiffany was mean to her. The officer reported this to GDFCS and filed runaway and curfew violation charges against Imani to ensure she saw a juvenile court judge. Between 2011 and the summer of 2013, the family moved often and sometimes stayed with relatives. In May 2013, the family visited Emin's sister, Sharonice, for Mother's Day. Sharonice and Robin noticed that Imani's hair was cut. When Robin asked Tiffany about it, Tiffany said, "If you act ugly, you should look ugly." Sharonice also noticed that Imani was more timid. That was the last time anyone saw her alive. On October 28th, Tiffany called Emin at work and told him Imani had died. Emin said that when he came home, everything looked normal. The other children played while Tiffany watched TV. Emin found Imani lying on a blanket on the floor of her bedroom. He told Tiffany they should call the police, but Tiffany refused because she didn't want to lose her children. Tiffany said they had to hide Imani's body and told Imani to be on our criminal mind. Dr. Staffenberg, the medical examiner, said Imani died of starvation. At the time, the 10-year-old weighed 32 pounds, the weight of an average toddler. In 2015, Iman pleaded guilty to his role in the crime. He was sentenced to life in prison. In April 2019, Tiffany, who defended herself in court, was found guilty on all charges. On May 1st, 2019, she was sentenced to death. Mitchell Blair, State, Michigan, U.S. Blair admitted that she killed 2 of her 4 children and placed their bodies in a home freezer. An eviction crew found the bodies a few years later. Blair described the abuse and deaths of her children in detail. She said she was not sorry. She called Stoney Blair, aged 13, and Stephen Barry, aged 9, demons. After I found out about Stephen, even before I started hitting him, I did actually call the police on advice, and I told them like a hypothetical situation, like because I was scared, like, you get what I'm saying? What's going to happen with my other two? I definitely didn't want to lose Gabby and Matthew, she said. Blair pleaded guilty to 2 counts of first-degree murder, claiming the kids were assaulting a younger sibling. I assaulted her every time he told me what she did to him. By assault, I mean I punched her. I put a bag over her head till she lost consciousness. I threw hot water on her, Blair told the court. The bodies were found in March when a court officer tried to serve an eviction notice at the Martin Luther King Apartments on the city's east side. A bailiff saw the body of a girl believed to be 13 years old. She was inside a standalone freezer. The bailiff then called 911. When officers arrived, they found another body in the freezer, a boy believed to be 9 years old at his death. Police believe the children died months apart in 2012 and 2013. Authorities are also trying to end Blair's parental rights to her 2 other children. In 2015, Blair was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Patricia Blackman, State, Alabama, U.S. On May 29, 1999, Patricia called 911. She told the operator that her 2-year-old daughter, Dominiqua, was not breathing. At 9:30 p.m., paramedics arrived. They found Dominiqua on the floor of the master bedroom. She was wearing a diaper and socks soaked in blood. She was also covered in vomit. One paramedic saw a large bump on her forehead and blood on her chest. The paramedics tried to revive her, but they could not. They took her to the emergency room at Flowers Hospital. Dr. Alfredo Paredes performed an autopsy. He found that Dominiqua died from multiple blunt force injuries to her head, chest, abdomen, and limbs. She was pronounced dead at 10:22 p.m. Dominiqua's pediatrician, Dr. Robert Head, said she had many bruises and marks. There was a shoe print on her chest. Dr. James Downs, the chief medical examiner for the state of Alabama, compared the sandals Patricia wore that day with a scanned image of Dominiqua's chest. He said the prints matched. Police searched the mobile home. They found Dominiqua's blood on several items, including a broken pool cue, a child's t-shirt, a pink flat sheet, a quilt, and 2 napkins. Patricia had adopted Dominiqua about 9 months before her death. A jury convicted her of capital murder. They voted 10-2 to sentence her to death. The judge agreed and gave her the death penalty. Dominique Atkinson, State, Alabama, U.S. Atkinson was convicted of murder for the killing of her boyfriend's wife in 2013. Her boyfriend Marcus Cheatham was an active duty Marine stationed at Camp Lejeune in North Carolina. He was married to Ashley McCarthy. Ashley stayed in their hometown of Montgomery and lived with her father. Meanwhile, Cheatham was dating Dominique Atkinson in North Carolina. When Ashley called Cheatham's commanders to ask for financial help and support from her husband, they pressured him to take responsibility and help her. On March 27, 2013, after Ashley called his chain of command again, prosecutors say Cheatham and Atkinson made a plan to kill her. Ashley didn't know her husband had a girlfriend. On Easter weekend in 2013, Marquise Cheatham and Dominique Atkinson drove from North Carolina to Montgomery. On March 31st, Cheatham called Ashley and asked her to meet him near the airport. They went to eat at a Waffle House. Cheatham told the court they started talking and got into an argument. While driving to his mother's house on North Pass Road in North Montgomery, he pulled a gun on Ashley. When they arrived, Dominique met them there. Together, they forced Ashley into the trunk of Cheatham's car. They left the scene and hid Ashley's car in an abandoned shed on Lower Wetumpka Road. As they drove away with Ashley still in the trunk, She managed to pull the safety release latch, and the trunk popped open. Ashley jumped out and started running. Cheatham chased her and began shooting. People nearby reported hearing gunshots and a woman begging for her life. Police later found 5 shell casings at the scene. They shot her twice in the back as she was running away, and then in the head. The shot to her head was a contact wound, meaning the gun was placed directly against her head. They left Ashley's body on the steps of a home on Wetumpka Road. Cheatham and Atkinson then drove away in Ashley's car. They went back to his mother's house to pick up some clothes. Then they stopped in Georgia to buy cleaning supplies so they could clean the car. After that, they returned to Camp Lejeune. Police later arrested both of them and sent them back to Alabama to face murder charges. Atkinson was sentenced to life in prison. Patricia Russa, State, Florida, U.S. Russa was convicted of the kidnapping and murder of Elizabeth Uptegraft in January 2007. At the time of the crime, she was living with her boyfriend, Cornelius Baker. Baker had just been released from jail after spending several months incarcerated for selling drugs. He and Russa decided to move to New York. To get extra money for the move, they planned to rob a house using a pistol that Baker had recently stolen. On the morning of January 7, 2007, they walked through a neighborhood in Daytona Beach, looking for a house to rob. Baker later told police that they picked the Uptegraft home because it looked nice. They believed there might be money inside. So, they walked up to the front door. Baker told Russa to ring the doorbell and said he would take care of the rest. Inside the house, Elizabeth Uptegraft and her mother Charlene Burns had just finished eating breakfast. The only occupants of the house at the time were Elizabeth Burns and Elizabeth's adult son, Joel Uptegraft. After breakfast, Burns went to her bedroom to take a nap, while Elizabeth sat down on the couch in the living room to read. The doorbell rang a few moments later. When Elizabeth opened it, Baker came through the door and immediately hit her with his gun. The gun discharged and the bullet grazed Elizabeth's head. At trial, Burns testified that she heard a noise that sounded like someone kicking in the door, followed by a gunshot. She entered the hallway outside her room and was attacked by Baker, who beat, choked, and kicked her. Burns said that Baker then told her to sit on the couch next to Elizabeth. When Burns saw Elizabeth's head wound, she yelled for her grandson Joel. Joel came out of his room and was attacked by Baker, who beat Joel with the gun. Baker and Russa then searched the house for valuables. Elizabeth eventually offered Baker her ATM card and PIN code if they would leave. Baker did not believe that the PIN was real and told Elizabeth that she would have to come with them. According to Burns, Baker then said that if Elizabeth did not go with him, he would kill all 3 members of the family. Because Elizabeth was covered in blood from her head wound, Baker told her that she would have to change clothes before they left. Baker also told her to find a hat to cover the wound. Baker collected Elizabeth's cell phone and all other phones in the house. Before she left the house, Elizabeth whispered to her mother to call the police. Baker then placed Elizabeth, the phones, and the stolen jewelry into Elizabeth's car, and he and Russa drove away from the house. Joel walked to a neighbor's house and called the police. Baker became nervous due to the number of police officers he saw in Daytona Beach, so he decided to drive to Flagler County to find an ATM. He later told police that he planned to get the money and then let Elizabeth go. Baker drove to a Winn-Dixie to try to withdraw money from an ATM using Elizabeth's card. Russa went into the store while Baker and Elizabeth waited in the car. When Russa was unable to withdraw from the Winn-Dixie ATM, she tried using an ATM at a nearby SunTrust Bank. Finally, Baker drove to a rural area of Flagler County known as the Mondex. Baker told police that he intended to drop Elizabeth off in a remote area where it would take her some time to find a phone. When they arrived at a spot that Baker thought was sufficiently isolated, Baker told Elizabeth to get out of the car, which she did. He also told her that she would live. According to Baker's statement to police, He then drove approximately 15 feet before stopping the car and getting out. Baker said that Rusa told him, "Don't do it, don't do it." Baker told officers, "I felt like I've came this far." Baker said that Elizabeth started to run and that he ran after her. She ran into some nearby bushes, then tripped and fell. Baker fired 2 shots at her. He then went back to the car and drove away. Rusa and Baker were arrested after a police chase. As an accomplice to the crime, Rusa was sentenced to life in prison. Crystal Gail Mangum, State, North Carolina, U.S. Police arrested Mangum on April 3, 2011, after she allegedly stabbed her boyfriend, Reginald Day, multiple times and seriously injured him. Authorities charged her with assault with a deadly weapon with intent to kill or inflict serious bodily injury, which is a Class C felony in North Carolina. 10 days later, Day died in the hospital. A grand jury then indicted Mangum for murder. Police held her in jail on a secured bail bond of $300,000, which had been set before Day's death. On November 1, 2011, a court found Mangum competent to stand murder trial. On May 1, 2012, Mangum's attorney withdrew from the case. He said Mangum had shared confidential case information with her supporters. On February 20, 2013, officials released Mangum on bail while she waited for trial. At trial, Mangum claimed that she acted in self-defense because Day was assaulting her. The prosecution argued that forensic evidence supported Day's dying statement, which said he was trying to get away from Mangum when she stabbed him. On November 22, 2013, a jury of 7 men and 5 women convicted Mangum of second-degree murder. Judge Paul Ridgway sentenced her to serve at least 14 years and 2 months, and up to 17 years and 9 months in prison. According to the North Carolina Department of Public Safety, her projected release date is February 27, 2026. In 2015, Mangum filed an appeal of her 2013 conviction. She argued that the court should not have allowed testimony about an earlier argument she had with a man in 2010. She later filed complaints with the North Carolina Bar Association against her appeal attorney and the lawyers from her 2013 trial. The bar declined to take any action. In 2018, Mangum appeared in front of Superior Court Judge Carolyn J. Thompson in Durham County. She filed motions against the Durham County Police Department, the Durham County District Attorney's Office, and police officer Mary Ann Bond. Mangum claimed they prosecuted her maliciously in connection with 2011 larceny charges. At the time of her arrest, she had 2 money orders from Day. She said Day gave her the money orders to pay rent and had told Officer Bond this before he died. Still, Bond and the district attorney's office charged her with 2 counts of larceny, 1 for each money order. Judge Thompson dismissed the case because the 3-year statute of limitations had expired. Mangum has not been convicted of those larceny charges. Olivia Libby Walker, town, Ridgeland, U.S. Walker was sentenced for working with her boyfriend, Kenyatta McGee, to rob a bank. She worked as the head teller of the bank. Prosecutors said robbers restrained her and locked her in the vault along with other employees. Later, Walker confessed to planning the robbery with McGee, who was her boyfriend. Police found surveillance video from a store that showed McGee and Walker buying several pairs of handcuffs a few days before the robbery. Investigators recovered a large black suitcase filled with the stolen money after U.S. Marshals and police tracked McGee to Gainesville, Florida, and arrested him. McGee and Walker thought they had committed the perfect crime, but that changed quickly once Ridgeland police started their investigation, said Michael Guest, the district attorney for Madison and Rankin counties. Now, McGee and Walker will spend many years in prison thinking about what they did and facing the consequences of their actions. Walker pleaded guilty to robbery and conspiracy to commit robbery. The court sentenced her to 20 years in prison. Officials said the court suspended the last 5 years of her sentence. Lena Baker, State, Georgia, U.S. In 1944, Baker started working for Ernest Knight, an older white man who had broken his leg. He owned a grist mill and, upon mistreating Lena several times, kept her imprisoned there for days. Meanwhile, Knight's son and the townspeople disliked their relationship and tried to end it by threatening Baker. One night, an argument broke out between them, during which Knight threatened Baker with an iron bar. As she tried to escape, they struggled over his pistol, and she shot and killed him. She immediately reported the incident and said she had acted in self-defense. Lena Baker faced capital murder charges and went to trial on August 14, 1944. Judge William Two Gun Worrell presided over the trial. He kept 2 pistols visible on his bench. At the trial, Baker said Knight forced her to go with him on the evening of April 29th. The town disliked their relationship. The county sheriff warned her to stay away from Knight or risk jail. Baker feared Knight's physical abuse because he forced himself on her. Knight's son had beaten her once, warning her to stay away from his father. Baker said she escaped that night and slept in the woods. When she returned to Cuthbert the next morning, Knight trapped her, took her to the grist mill, and locked her in. When Knight came back, Baker told him she was leaving. According to Baker, they struggled over his pistol after he threatened her with an iron bar. She immediately reported the incident to J.A. Cox, the county coroner who had employed her before. The all-white, all-male jury rejected Baker's claim of self-defense. They convicted her of capital murder by the end of the first day. This charge meant an automatic death sentence. Because of racial segregation laws and voting restrictions in Georgia, most black people could not serve on juries. Baker's court-appointed lawyer, W.L. Ferguson, filed an appeal but later dropped her as a client. Governor Ellis Arnold gave Baker a 60-day reprieve. The Board of Pardons and Parole reviewed her case but denied clemency in January 1945. On February 23rd, she was moved to Georgia State Prison in Reidsville. Before her execution, Baker said, "What I'd done, I did in self-defense, or I would have been killed myself. Where I was, I could not overcome it. God has forgiven me. I have nothing against anyone. I picked cotton for Mr. Pritchett, and he has been good to me. I am ready to go. I am one of the numbers. I am ready to meet my God. I have a very strong conscience." Lena Baker was executed on March 5, 1945. They buried her in an unmarked grave behind Mount Vernon Baptist Church, where she had sung in the choir. In 2005, the parole board granted Baker a full and unconditional pardon. Commentators have said that the Board of Pardons and Parole could have reduced her charge to voluntary manslaughter. This charge would have carried an average sentence of 15 years and could have saved her life. Erica Shepard, State, Texas, U.S. On June 30, 1993, 19-year-old Erica Shepard and James Dickerson planned to steal a car so they could drive to Bay City and visit friends. They searched for a victim outside the apartment complex where they were staying with Erica's older brother, Jonathan. They saw Marilyn Sage Meir, a 43-year-old white mother of 2, unloading packages from her black Mazda 626. When they noticed her apartment door was open, they went inside and waited. When Marilyn refused to give them her car keys, the robbery turned violent. Dickerson told Shepard to find a butcher knife, and she did. He stabbed Marilyn 5 times and then hit her with a 10-pound statue while Shepard held her down. Marilyn begged for her life. Shepard later told police she was present during the crime and did not try to stop it, but she said she did not stab or beat Marilyn. One of Marilyn's daughters found her mother's body. A person who knew Shepard gave information to police that led to the arrests of Shepard and Dickerson. Erica Shepard was found guilty of murder and robbery. On March 3, 1995, she was sentenced to death. She remains on death row in Texas. Deborah Denise Brown, State, Ohio. Brown and her partner, Alton Coleman, lured 9-year-old Annie and 7-year-old Tamika Turks into a quiet, wooded area. They took off Tamika's shirt. Brown tore it into strips and used the pieces to tie up both girls. As Tamika began to cry, Brown held the child's mouth and nose. Coleman stomped on her stomach and chest, then threw her lifeless body into a forest area. Next, both Coleman and Brown sexually assaulted Annie, threatening to kill her if she did not do as they instructed. Afterward, they choked Annie until she lost consciousness. While authorities were recovering Tamika's body, Coleman and Brown attacked again. Donna Williams, a 25-year-old woman from Gary, Indiana, was reported missing. Almost a month later, on July 11th, her decomposed body was found in Detroit. Her car was parked about half a mile away. She had been assaulted, and the cause of death was ligature strangulation. On another occasion, Coleman and Brown assaulted and murdered Tunny Story of Over the Rhine, a working-class neighborhood of Cincinnati. Story's body was discovered 8 days later. Underneath it was the bracelet that was missing from the Temple home. On July 12, 1984, the FBI added Alton Coleman to its 10 most wanted list as a special edition. A national manhunt began to find Coleman and Brown. On July 20th, police arrested both of them without incident in Evanston. A group of officers from several states worked together to decide the best way to prosecute the couple. Authorities chose Ohio as the first state to bring charges, aiming for the death penalty. Alton Coleman was executed by lethal injection on April 26, 2002, at the Southern Ohio Correctional Facility in Lucasville, Ohio. Brown is currently at the Ohio Reformatory for Women, but faces the death penalty in Indiana. If you enjoy the way we create videos and would like us to bring more cases like this to light, please hit the like button and subscribe for more in-depth dives.